Oh, the owl was here.
So I'm gonna give you back the.
I'll try it, yeah. Okay. That seemed to work. Do you want to switch again? This is fine. Sure. I can take this. Yes.
What are you doing, Tom?
Yeah.
Do you go to the Christmas lighting?
No, our downstairs neighbors have good lighting out, but I haven't contributed to anything there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We cannot see her if it's just an attendant, and it's a woman.
Correct. And so I will add members as they come on.
And Lucy as well.
I guess, I don't know, actually, we didn't really talk about that.
I think we should. She's like,
Fine by me.
would be nice.
Yeah.
To
And
have to see her.
A liaison of sorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do others as well. It's
I feel like at this point, we have so few.
it's really, it's
I'd
kind
be
of
happy to see Era.
Tom's call.
Yeah.
Can Era hear us now?
Yeah, I'm fine to do that.
Okay.
Everyone's getting promoted.
Some members are having trouble logging on. Do I think the updated link is working?
The link in the document's working, but I didn't realize that the one that was in the email is broken.
Yeah.
So you have to open up the agenda and then click on that link.
Well, I see the updated email with the updated agenda does not include a Zoom link directly in that new email. Just check, can y'all hear us all right? Cool.
Wait, did I? I missed the theater. Hey, there's Lucy. We've been unmuted this whole time,
Hi.
right? Yes.
I enjoyed listening to you talk about us.
Thank you.
Era, what is on your painting or what, not painting, art in the background? Oh, it's people. It's like Aikido or something.
Yeah, I can't get the angle right. It's sumo wrestlers.
Ah, okay.
So I lived in Tokyo for a long time, and this is a sumo tournament program.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I became very into sumo.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
couldn't
if anybody
figure
ever
out-
goes, it's a really exciting thing to go see.
Wow.
Hmm.
Sure, it's more complicated than one thinks. You know, you just like see big people.
Yes, it's a
Right.
very ritualistic and
Yeah.
incredibly athletic sport. Those guys are really athletic. All guys, of course. Still. But there was a scandal while I was there because, of course, it's the very traditional Japanese sport, but a lot of Americans, Samoans, Hawaiians, and Americans were winning at sumo because we are very good at getting very big and we're dominating the top tier of sumo. So there was some scandal about that.
Scandal in the sense that people were doing something wrong.
No, just the Japanese were concerned that this very traditional sport was slipping away from, there were conversations about banning foreigners and that didn't
Foreigners.
happen. And I haven't followed what's happened since then, but it
Yeah.
was becoming increasingly international.
Mm. Fascinating. A little light on attendance this month.
Yeah, so I heard Ian and Ted both don't anticipate making it. I think Lena's on her way, overcoming the Zoom issue. Haven't heard from Alex either way.
Just need one more to be able to vote, right?
Yep. See, anything in particular that would be useful to start with while people are trickling in? If y'all are up for it, I wonder if it would make sense to start out with the city update, moving that up front-ish. If people come in, knowing that people can get at least some of the content later from the slides if needed.
That's fine by me. Do we want to promote guests to panelists or are we just gonna leave any other guests that come in?
Our default is the guests will not be promoted to panelists. We will do our best to give guests the opportunity to weigh in. Any guest, please feel free to raise your hand, ask questions if that is permitting, and we will give guests a chance to speak as much as possible, time permitting. But we'll leave them as we will default to leaving them as guests.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, so we'll take things out of order and go with the city update.
Yeah, I'll give a brief kickoff and then we'll hand it over to the city update.
Okay.
All right, welcome folks. My name is Tom Lamar. I'm chair of the committee. We are going to be taking things a little bit out of order tonight. Some members are still trickling in. We're going to start with the city update from later on the agenda. And as once more members are on, then we'll move back to probably the original order. For taking minutes, Gregory, are you all set?
Yep. I just wanted to raise that Josh Meyer has his hand raised in the section there.
Do you want me to give him the option to talk?
Yeah.
All right, you should be able to unmute Joshua.
Hey Joshua, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you so far.
What's in the Q&A? Careful, Joshua.
Okay, not hearing anything yet. Guests, feel free to submit questions in Q&A and or raise your hand permitting. Josh, if you had something, we weren't able to hear you, but feel free to bring it to our attention again later.
You can go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And Actually, now that Lena is here, welcome Lena, perhaps we will do some initial items, but then maybe still do the city update early on, in case more folks trickle on later. All right. Welcome Lena, we'll do a roll call of present members, Lena.
Here.
Ted Bellman said he would not be able to make it, Gregory.
He waved.
Okay, Mark.
I'm here.
Okay, welcome folks. And Gregory's acting secretary. So with that, we'll go back to being out of order and hand it over to the city for the city update early on. And we do have a few items we intend to vote on later. Just wanted to see if any other members do trickle in later as well for the items we'll be voting on.
All right. Okay, so we're gonna kick off today's update with a little bit of an overview of the plan for snow clearance this winter. Eric sent his regrets. He was not able to make it this year. Thankfully, there aren't a ton of new updates, so he was able to update the slides that he presented to you all last year with any relevant new information. So I'm going to go through those now, and then if we have any questions, Viola and I will do our best to answer them for you guys, and if not, we'll make sure that Eric can weigh in on anything more specific or technical. So just a refresher on the typical storm timeline. Before the storm, DPW and any associated contractors pre-treat the roads. That does include bike lanes. We'll get into this more later, but that includes things like this new brining system that they're starting to roll out more extensively in sort of, salting the roads and the bike lanes more specifically ahead of the storm. Then DPW and contractors repeatedly plow their routes. De-icer is applied or reapplied as well during the storm. 12 to 24 hours after, the bike facilities are assessed and additional clearing is done if necessary. And then lastly is sort of after the 24-hour period, continuing to respond to new and lingering 311 requests. And obviously the timing for a lot of this is all dependent on the intensity of the storm. I see that Scott raised a hand, but maybe I'll get through these slides and these initial slides first. Treating different bike facilities. So for our protected bike lanes, snow fighting is conducted using small equipment equipped with plows, sanders, occasional blowers and brushes. And then non-separated bike facilities, primarily where they're next to travel lanes. The snow fighting is primarily conducted by trucks and other large equipment, kind of alongside the plowing of roads or the travel lanes. There is some progress on the Vision Zero crew staffing, which is great news. It was funded last budget cycle. And however, we've had a heck of a time hiring, not just for this crew, but overall in DPW, new labor. So we've finally got 2 of the 3 vacant positions filled, which is great news. And then the final position should be posted within the next few weeks and filled internally. There's a photo of some of our newer equipment. Okay, so what is different this year? On the community path extension, it will be broken into 2 routes, covered with a combination of city staff and contractors. I'll get into, I think it's on the next slide, a more detailed breakdown of where all of our bike facilities are and how those routes actually are going to work. But the community path is definitely its own thing that warrants, in fact, 2 of its own routes. We do have some new protected bike infrastructure. This is all stuff that Mobility has worked closely with DPW on making sure that they're aware of and figuring out how they can actually make this all happen, given all those new facilities. So you guys, I think, are probably already mostly aware of, mostly are aware of most of these, if not all of them. But we have our Grand Union Boulevard protected bike lanes, which also encompasses a portion of Foley Street. We do have posts in both directions on Holland Street now, so that project is in its more or less final state as far as the bike infrastructure goes for the time being. Powderhouse Boulevard, we now have a protected bike lane in one direction. We have our two-way connection that we're maintaining on School Street between Medford and the Path. And then from earlier in the year, we implemented a bike lane, protected bike lane on Bow Street from Summer to Somerville Ave. There's also some other new infrastructure that DPW that we made sure that they're aware of and they're prepared to handle, such as the East Broadway bus lanes. Not going to list it all out here, but a ton of traffic calming over in East Somerville and the Neighborways network over there. And then some of the Spring Hill sewer separation project work is coming to fruition in terms of surface improvements. And right now that mostly entails curb extensions on Summer Street. So we've been working closely with them to make sure that they're aware of this and are responding appropriately. They've now implemented this new procedure that I think we mentioned to you guys last year. They've been doing it, I think it's at least their second year in a row now. They do a snow drill in October, November to actually go out and make sure that these facilities, like that everyone is aware of what it needs to be doing in a much lower stakes environment and ironing out any kinks. So that's been a big process improvement on their end. So here are the bike lane routes. I think we had, last year we had 4 routes and that was covered by 8 pieces of contractor equipment. This year we have 5 routes plus 2 community path routes, and it doesn't actually say, so I don't know the answer, but I don't know how many pieces of equipment is actually covering that, but that is a natural question that we can follow up on with Eric. So the community path, as mentioned on the last slide, is going to be broken up into 2 actually, but as shown here. We have a sort of West Somerville route that encompasses both directions of Holland, one direction of College, Powderhouse Boulevard as well. We have sort of our Beacon, Washington, Webster, Union Square route. We have another route kind of in the Prospect Hill, Union Square, East Somerville area that covers Washington, Bow, Somerville Ave, and Medford. A Cedar Street and Central Broadway route. And then one up over in Assembly Square and Shore Drive in 10 Hills.
Just to make sure these are all protected bike lanes. So the bike lanes that are regular on a regular road, the non-protected, they just get covered with a street.
Yes,
plowing.
This is specifically to accommodate the smaller equipment that is needed to plow our protected bike lanes. It's a good point, Bill. Oh, and actually you'll see that Powderhouse is even covered twice in the blue Route 4, I think, and Route 5. And that is intentional because Powderhouse Circle is such a large area with a lot of tight turns and angles for that infrastructure. So that was a smart improvement or sort of a smart catch on DPW's part to make sure that there's a little bit of overlap on that one. All right. So for the community path, DPW want to make sure that everyone was aware, and I think we talked about this a little bit last year when we were first starting to think about opening the path, that we don't want to sugarcoat things and that maintenance is going to be extremely difficult due to the design of the path. There's really nowhere to put the snow. It will be handled jointly by DPW Grounds and DPW Highway, which are separate divisions within DPW. And there will be some contractor support as well, but I believe, there's just more flexibility and more direct control when it is internal city staff. So I think the intent is to have more internal staff on this because it's so important, but also so challenging. But in the case of the significant snow, parts of the path may not be maintained. And even when they will be maintained, they may have to be closed for portions while those snow clearing operations are underway because there is just literally nowhere for anyone to go, including those plows when they're taking care of getting the snow out of those facilities. So I think they're asking for patience and it's going to be a learning opportunity. This is definitely one of the drawbacks of everything that's happened with the GLX. And, I think we all could have known that there were going to be issues here for a long time, but this is the position we're in and we're going to have to do our best to work with it. and figure out how we can get better as a community. So, definitely ask for patience on the part of our DPW partners, because we know this is going to be hard and it's not going to be perfect and it's going to be frustrating. But we can only do the best with what we've got. So next steps for this upcoming winter, we will hopefully, as said earlier, staff up the Vision Zero crew. We will incorporate that brining that I mentioned earlier into the Vision Zero crew operations. So that, last year we were doing brining behind some of the big trucks, but now that's going to be happening on the bike infrastructure itself, on the protected bike infrastructure, which is really cool. So hopefully we're going to see better early on returns from that, and those facilities will be looking better from the start due to that brining. And then learning from experience and getting out on the path and kind of learning on the job and refining the strategy as they go. And I think that's really all we can expect from DPW at this point, is for them to continue to sort of keep a little level of humility about this, but being willing to improve and be flexible, and if there are new strategies to figure it out and go from there.
With that, let me pause for questions
Yes.
about snow, starting with Gregory.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a couple of things about the community path extension and closures. I was curious if there's going to be some way of reporting that to people ahead of time, or tracking of that, like if sections are closed. And then I think a while back we talked about detours and possibly signage for that. Has there been any plans on that of like snow routes that people could take if the community path is closed?
So I think with any closure, and you might have noticed that the path will be closed for a few days currently, maybe until the 10th or something, for some bridge work that the DOT has to do on and I'm not sure if it was the Cross or the McGrath Bridge. So that is posted on the GLX website. And then probably also on social media. So I would suggest to check there before you use the path in the winter. And we can try to make sure that coordination, that DPW is aware that they should coordinate that with our communications department.
Are we
As far
not
as
posting
Oops.
on the path? Because it's not just Somerville and GLX website users, which I don't know. I don't visit those websites.
Yeah, Mark, I would assume that DPW expects to put a sign on the path, but I think what Greg was talking about is if you're in the winter, use the commute path for your work commuter. So you should check the webpage on the city side.
And is the city communicating that we are posting that? Because, people from Lexington could be using this path.
I know, like, what is your suggestion though? I mean, how
The
do
city
we-
has social media that they can go, hey, there will be closures. We will be
That's what
posting them here.
Yeah, so that's what I just said. We will be using social media then too. I'm sorry, I might have misheard you, Mark. And then for Greg, you're talking about the detours. I don't think this winter we will have detours in place. And that's actually something that I think the bicycle committee could be really helpful. Like, if you can think of good detours in Somerville up until the East Somerville station, they might be fairly easy. The really complicated one is if the viaduct is closed, and that's a challenging detour.
If the viaduct is closed, will we be able to physically post that sort of further up on the path so that people don't sort of get
Yes,
too
we will
far down?
post that at the East Somerville station then.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments about snow clearance? Seeing none. Okay. All right, we are definitely starting to ramp down for the year in terms of outreach and engagement. Oh, that says outreach and recruitment, whoops, for the year. So as of right now, the only event scheduled for December is actually something that PTAC is hosting. They're going to be doing tabling at the Winter Farmers Market at the Armory, which I think we mentioned last month. I'm not sure if Bike Committee was planning to tack onto that or reached out, but that is happening on Saturday, I believe. In case anyone's curious, Kate actually went through and did a tally of all of the pop-ups and community meetings that we had this year and all of our various engagement events. And I think we're gonna cross 100. I think if not at 100, we're at like 98 for the year, which is really cool. So that means that mobility alone was out doing at least two things a week in terms of engagement with the community, which is just, so much better than we used to do, which is really exciting. So kudos to Kate in particular for that effort, and thanks for all the support that any of you all have provided for any of those various events, because it takes a village, right? In terms of construction and project updates, a lot of activity is starting to ramp down for the year. So that's going to be the sort of theme here. And I'll just go through which ones or there's still things to wrap up and what the plan for next year is. So for Spring Hill, largely ramping down for the year. There will, however, be some surface work continuing on Highland Ave. Eversource, I think, is going to be replacing a gas main on portions of Highland Ave over the winter. And then Gioso, the city crew, will be doing some work on Summer Street as well over the winter, and that's going to be down by Nunziato. For Powderhouse at Alewick Brook Parkway, they have been continuing to implement the new signals, which is really cool. I think they're like installing stuff in the cabinet tomorrow, and so we should be seeing those actually probably up in flash in the next week or two, and then hopefully shortly after that fully functional, which is really cool. So there's going to be more work to do in the spring in terms of finish work, finishing the sidewalks and the paving and all the final markings, but we should have a fully functional intersection by the end of the year, which is awesome. And then lastly, McGrath resurfacing. Construction continues to happen on the truss bridge between Pearl and Medford. That is going to continue over the winter and into 2024. And then all the final striping and installation of the bike facility that we're all really excited about on McGrath will take place in 2024. For some of our Complete Streets project updates on the construction side, we all snapped a great photo here just a little while ago of the Walnut Gilman current status. So not complete yet. It's, the raised crosswalk has to actually get redone in the spring. There's some finish work on the bike lane and it's all going to get repaved. But it's in a usable state, which is cool, over on Walnut at Gilman. But sorry, I skipped ahead. Going back to Holland College, construction activities have wrapped up for the year on the Holland College project. Phase 2 will begin at some point in 2024. We have to figure out all the various priorities. I think the crew that's responsible for that project is going to be over on West Washington first, so TBD on the exact timing there. But essentially replacing the sidewalks in front of all the businesses on Holland Street, and then as well as on the sort of bottom stretch of College Ave closest to Davis Square. That will all be taking place at some point next year. For the separate Davis Square sidewalk work, the replacement of all those brick sidewalks just wrapped up earlier this week, actually, which is really cool. So our contractor was really motivated to get that work done, and they did it a little bit faster than we thought, which was really, really great. And so accessibility win there. And then there is a sort of separate project. I've been lumping them together on signal work.
And it is anticipated that we will be seeing some of that signal equipment and timing and phasing changes that we've talked about in the past happening over the next few weeks. But that is managed by the MBTA, and it's been a little bit challenging to sort of get concrete updates. So I'm hoping that that's the case and it doesn't lag. But as of right now, that's what we've been told, that this is a December thing as well. And that does include sort of a temporary condition where we have a 100-foot stretch a protected bike lane, taking over the right turn lane as you're sort of in that last bit of Highland Ave, where you would go onto College Ave, taking that over and making that a protected bike lane. And then we do final paving and striping in the spring. So that's still the intent there, to at least get that established by the end of the year.
You got a question from Lena?
Clarification, if it's like can be quick, can you say what the signal like differences are going to be, like at what intersections that signals are going to be different than they are now, if you can? It's my bad, I don't remember.
No, that's okay, Lena. If it's okay with you, I may have to go back and like there's just a lot of little things. So I can probably find where that was, and it may just be easier to send that summary to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just curious. There's a lot of them. That's the thing.
Yeah, and we're not going to be able to remove every single conflict between right turning cars and pedestrians, but we are going to be able to remove at least all of the left turning conflicts, I know. So I know one of the more challenging ones is when cars can basically go right from Highland to Dover, right? That will be separated. So yeah, so that's the big one. I think that one is going to be removed. Those are going to be separated. So you will still have to, as a pedestrian, you will still have to contend with right turning cars coming off of Holland, but there's generally enough pedestrian traffic, at least from my experience, that it like is a little bit less, like the left turns are the really hairy ones. So we tried to remove as much as we could. It wasn't possible to remove everything without just reverting back to an exclusive phase and kind of, making things really challenging. But that was a big one.
No, that's great. That's awesome. That's a real important one. I think like that's also an issue for drivers. They feel trapped, like when they're making that left, they like get stuck. They have no idea. They're like, wait, I thought I could go. And now all these people, like it's not fun to be a pedestrian watching drivers also have to deal with that left. And as a bicyclist heading out, like it's the same thing. You're like, someone's going to like, because they're like in a bind, basically. They're like stranded and want to get out. And so then they're going to like left hook me. Yeah, that's going to be sick. Okay, cool. That's all I want to know.
Cool. Yeah, totally. So, continuing on, Pro Plus 6, construction has wrapped up on the Pro Plus 6 work as well this year. And then any remaining items, there's really not much left. I think it's mostly this stuff over at Walnut and Gilman, where they're going to pave and do some final striping and finish work there. That will take place in the spring. And then it's going to be full steam ahead on Washington Street. Some initial drainage work is underway, so they can kind of get that. That's not as temperature dependent, so they're doing some of that work now. If they don't finish all of that, they'll likely end up taking a break for January, February, and come back in March to finish that drainage work, and then be ready to sort of hit the ground running when it's warm enough to start pouring new sidewalks in the spring. Next, come on. For Complete Streets projects in the design phase, we have updates on Tufts and West Broadway. For Tufts, the design refinement is continuing based on our last round of community engagement and feedback. And what we found from that pilot that we did last month that we talked a little bit about with you guys. So we're just continuing to work on that process at the moment and kind of need to figure out how all that's going to come together and go from there. And on West Broadway, our first round of engagement is now officially complete at this point. Our last event was on Saturday of last week. And so me, Greg, and Kate were out there, and actually Brad showed up too and took this photo. And we actually were surprised. We printed out 85 flyers and handed them all out in less than the 2 hours that we were planning to be there. So I don't live far from here, but I was surprised, and Era and Lena will probably not be surprised that there's actually a ton of pedestrian traffic in this area. And it was really cool. Everyone was really engaged and interested in learning more about the project and had a lot of really good thoughts on things. But Yigo's a gem for anyone that hasn't been there. Seems like a really cool addition to the neighborhood. So that was fun. And then we're now going to take all of that and start producing a concept out of it. So we got the committee's feedback last month. We're going to weigh that against everything else that we heard and start to figure out what that means for this project. And we'll be coming back to you all soon enough with something to actually show. And then last but not least, I'll just say it, Bill, and then you can chime in if there are questions.
I can
You
take
can
this.
also
Yeah,
go for it.
So the lighting on the community path is still a piece of is in the making. We have installed this temporary light there, and that was primarily to figure out if the solar option would work. And then parallel to that, we are planning to design and install permanent lighting in 2024, speaking next year. And so we will hire, or we're in the process of hiring a consultant to help us with that. So stay tuned.
Any questions or comments on this or previous slides?
Is the state pitching in on this lighting? Or they just left us with no lighting?
They left us with what is installed.
Cool.
Okay, anything else? Okay, seeing nothing on this, I believe we are done with the city update. Let's see. So I will next go to our first focus item on administrative updates. So I'll cover this. There are two potential changes that I anticipate may be relatively minor. If it is more involved, we can take the time to discuss more thoroughly. The two administrative items are, one is adoption of a code of conduct. So members may recall that earlier this year, the city set out a code of conduct that they're asking, I believe, members of all committees, commissions, and boards to sign. Equivalent to open meeting law, to generally respect each other and guests, etc. And the ask now, as I understand it, is for each committee, etc., to vote as a whole to adopt that code of conduct. Any context I'm missing there?
Nope, that is it. I think this is just want to note that this has been a priority for the Ballantyne administration. And so this is something, sort of day one, the mayor wanted staff to start focusing on. And so it's very, very near and dear to her. And I think a lot of it's just common sense, right? So just treat each other with respect is more or less the goal there, and make sure it's sort of codified. So.
Cool. That was largely my impression as well. It seemed like reasonable enough asks and seemed reasonable enough to codify as well. With that, I'll open it up to members. Any comments, questions, any concerns about adopting that same code of conduct? So when there is none, I will make a motion to the committee adopt the code of conduct. All right, I'll put forth a motion that the committee formally adopt the code of conduct. Do we have a second? Seconded by Lena. All members in favor, please say aye, raise your hand, otherwise make your vote known. Okay, hands down. The committee has adopted the code of conduct. Thanks, folks. Our next administrative update is to the committee's bylaws themselves. So currently our bylaws state a minimum meeting requirement for new members, asking members to attend a minimum of prospective members to attend a minimum of 6 meetings before being formally appointed as members. At the time those were made, we had a strong influx of new members. In some ways, it may have been easier for folks to become involved in person, though hard to say. As of right now, we have fewer members, and we are actively interested in getting new members. And Mobility had flagged that that could be a concern, and that, as I understand it, is relatively unusual among other city commissions, etc. So I think it was well intended. I think it is very important to have a reasonable commitment from folks. They intend to actually be able to make meetings regularly, etc. But given this is relatively unusual bylaw among other committees, I think it makes sense to remove that bylaw. That'll again open it up to members for any thoughts on that proposal.
Does this have any other impact on the process? So, like, would the committee still be able to vote on the approval of members, or it doesn't change anything else about the new members being added, correct?
The proposal currently here is specifically just around the 6-month minimum. Do you want to speak more to what the process might be, or what you've done with PTAC for new members in the past?
Yeah, whatever is formally outlined in the ordinance is all you guys really have to follow at this point. I honestly would have to double check to see what that says, but I think it just requires you guys put forth a proposal for anyone that you want, really, and then someone on the mayor's staff has to sign off on that. So I think that would stay the same. That's in the ordinance. That would be harder to change. The 6-month requirement is a bylaw, so that's really just up to you guys to say whether or not you want to follow that or change that, or however you want to formally make that or informally make that known. The additional context for why we're asking this question in the first place is that Mobility is willing to put out a joint call for volunteers, for members, for applicants, whatever you want to call it, for PTAC and Bike Committee at the same time. And so we just want to make sure that as we do that over the next few weeks, that it's understood. And it seemed like this is something that the committee is interested to try and recruit new members. That we just want to make sure that if there is that 6-month requirement, that we're making that known up front, versus having someone apply and then thinking that they're going to become a member and then being told you actually just have to be a volunteer for 6 months for it. So I think we just wanted clarification from the committee on that. But it shouldn't impact the approval process otherwise.
Yeah, so I'll also add to that if the committee would prefer to keep that requirement, that is certainly an option. But it would probably be useful to account for that in recruiting. With that, I think Richard has his hand raised. Let's give him a chance to speak.
Good. Is this public comment like not on the agenda stuff? Or only?
Was that a question?
That's a question. Is this a non-agenda items, or can it just be about anything right now?
We are happy to hear what you're interested in. What's on your mind?
I was going to ask about what we can do about in standing with Palestine and condemning the terrorist attacks from the Israeli government against Muslim civilians.
Yeah. In that regard, I'm happy to hear feedback, but I think this committee does have a full enough agenda that I do not think we would make a specific motion that is off agenda.
I know some city councils around the country have kind of come out and passed their own resolutions, like either standing with Israel or standing with Palestine. So typically, like a city council, city governments can pass resolutions.
I agree with you, but we are not a city council. We are just a bicycle advocacy committee. So I think if you want to take that up at the city council, that would be great.
So this is like a school board meeting. Sorry.
Yeah, if you can just review our agenda.
Man, is this where I can ask why we're letting Jews groom children and fucking niggers run wild in the schools?
Okay. I tried.
Well, thank you for your patience, Mark. With that, we will resume our agenda item discussing the proposal to remove the minimum meeting requirement for new members. Do any committee members have thoughts regarding that proposal?
At this point in time, with our current membership and activities, I think removing that is a good idea. It shouldn't be a barrier to be part of this committee.
Sounds good. Mark, would you care to make such a motion?
Sure, I will make the motion.
All right, do we have a second? Seconded by Gregory. All members, please say aye, raise your hand, otherwise make your vote known. All right, motion has passed. Thank you, Mark. All right, that is it for administrative items. With that, I'll move to our next focus, priorities for new protected bike lanes. Mobility, would you be up for giving general background on what you're looking for from the committee? If not, I can.
Sure, everybody knows that, or not everybody knows, we are in the process, mobility division with in coordination with other departments to prioritize what lanes of the bicycle network plan, protected bike lanes and neighborways we will be implementing next year and probably for 2025-26 as well. And we would welcome the committee's feedback. Just, I assume, like you've done every year, to look at your priorities. If you can focus on the network, you don't have to necessarily focus just on the priority. If you feel like we've missed one, or you'd like to point out a connection that would be easily implementable. What we do ask for in your list to also give reasons why you promote one over the other, or why your priority is there. And just as a secondary piece of information, you all know that the participatory budget gives us some money to implement 1 to 2 miles. So we're also trying to look for that. That does not necessarily have to be as part of what we had planned to or are planning to install, regardless of this budget, the participatory budget.
And in terms of timeline, if I understand it correctly, hoping that now we can have a initial discussion and give some general idea of what the committee may be leaning, including reasoning. And then in January, we would have like larger discussion around prioritization in general.
Yep.
Is that consistent?
Yep, that sounds good.
All right, with that, we'll open it up to the committee. Curious to hear folks' thoughts on suggested priorities, especially for quick build projects. And why that is, or alternatively, what reasoning you would be interested in. I have some thoughts, but want to hear from folks overall. Gregory?
I was curious about if the quick build will include any repaving, or if we should take into consideration existing paving conditions when making the recommendations.
Quick build will not include repaving, but you can still put a list out of streets that you feel like are important to repave sooner than later.
Yeah. Do you have any particular streets in mind that would rank highly or poorly from that?
Well, I was just thinking of like West Washington, when that was done as a quick build, there was some sections that were really challenging because it wasn't repaved in certain spots. So it just when suggesting quick build routes, I wanted to sort of be mindful of what we couldn't and couldn't do, and if that bike infrastructure would be compromised by paving conditions.
Yeah.
Tara?
Somerville Bike Safety had some thoughts about this and wanted to encourage the city to prioritize connecting recently completed Safe Streets projects. So for example, connecting the Pearl Street reconstruction project and the Otis Street Quick Build Neighborway and Glen Street, with some quick build connections there, really thinking about using these quick build funds to fill out a neighborhood with safe infrastructure so that you do see the network and see the early benefits of having a network in a neighborhood.
Lena?
I just want to echo that, like, it's always about the connectivity. It's always about those little things. Like, you have to make the main corridors good, but also it has to connect. And even just biking all the way down Mass Ave, like from Cambridge to Dorchester, it's like where the bike lane ends, it's enough to turn someone away from trying that again. And so like the connectivity thing is huge, just in terms of being like, look at this amazing, let's say like Garden Street in Cambridge, where it's like very calm, very family friendly, but just then, I don't know, it ends up not there anymore. So connectivity is key. And so I totally agree with that.
I also really like the connectivity framing. A couple other streets I'll add or some framing. For one, I looked up a memo that the committee had sent the city in February 2022 of some suggested quick build priorities at the time. Some of which have since been done, but some are still on there. And some of the streets that were there at the time, I wanted to bring up Elm Street was on there as a candidate, partly due to the number of destinations along there, partly because some parts at least are wide enough that it may be easier. Another committee suggestion at the time was Beacon Street, Washington Street to the Cambridge City line. If I had to choose a specific street, that might be the one I would suggest. And especially knowing now that Cambridge has since built Hampshire Street protected bike lane and largely completed the Inman Square reconstruction. It's a much more compelling candidate. Many more connections there than there were a few years ago. Then the other two not yet done were doing more Powderhouse Boulevard and Mossland, I think, has been a priority for a while, a short section, but probably also a relatively hard one. Any other particular Canada streets coming to mind for folks, or particular things to connect to, particular reasons to be prioritizing? Lena, then Greg.
Yeah, I would say like the importance of connecting Davis Square to Somerville Ave, meaning Union, or sorry, to Union Square, meaning Elm Street. And it should be safe in both directions. It's not great road condition. I think Somerville Ave is a major corridor. Lots of stuff, and it takes you to Union Square and Bow Market and like all of that. So Elm Street taking you through that and down to there is like important. And I know Mossland is like in there, and basically both of those are ways to get to Somerville Ave. So it seems like a connection to a safe connection from like the heart of Somerville onto like Somerville Ave is important.
Yeah, I was gonna also stress some of these connectors, and I think one very small connector that I think would be really helpful is schools, the last bit of School Street up to Highland. It's really difficult to get down to the community, up and down to the community path from around the high school, and I think School Street could really help. And we already have that the existing protected bike lane on one side, so maybe we could extend that up.
I really like that suggestion as well, yeah, especially since half of it is there already. Anything else right now? Cool. Is that sufficient detail for y'all to go on for now?
Yeah.
Rather more explicit ranking among those, or is that enough
No,
guidance?
no, that's good.
All right.
Thank you.
Want to call for any closing thoughts on prioritization? Hearing none. With that, we'll move back to our procedural general business and updates. Going through this, first, our next item there is approval of the November meeting minutes. Appreciate Ian taking minutes there, so wasn't able to make it tonight. Do folks have any suggested changes or concerns before moving to approve the November meeting minutes? Hearing none, I move that the committee approve the November meeting minutes. Do we have a second? Seconded by Lena. All members in favor, please say aye with your hand, make your vote known. November meeting minutes are approved. See. Next up, we have potential comment on several aspects of larger plans. I guess we do next have our next item is an update on the proposed Safe Streets ordinance. I actually do not have very much on that right now. I know that it is still under discussion. I know that my understanding is that PPAC has weighed in and generally asking that the plan be more comprehensive, I would describe it, in terms of like covering more modes, but also potentially covering things that are harder to do via quick build. Other than that, I don't have too much specific for the committee right now, but wanted to include this here as an opportunity if anyone does have thoughts to add right now.
Has anybody read the ordinance? Do you know where to find it?
So I have a link somewhere that I'll put in the chat again. Add that back in later. Thought I had it up, but I don't right now.
Yeah, just for some additional context, Tom, I'd add for everyone else that the draft ordinance language was proposed by Councilor Burnley, and he has reached out and is now working with Brad and Justin specifically on our team to start to refine some of that. So now is a really good opportunity for the committee to weigh in if you guys feel like there should be things that should be considered as that process is happening. So I think next month would be fine for that discussion, but I'm not sure I'd wait too much longer if the committee wants to weigh in.
Right, maybe as an action item here, I'll reach out to Councilor Burnley and ask if there are like particular areas that would benefit from the committee's review. And I'll send a link again to the currently proposed ordinance for folks to weigh in on. Cool. Anything else on this item? Our next one, I also do not have much on right now. May cover this later for Somerville Climate Forward Plan implementation. I also just mentioned that there is a high level Somerville Climate Forward Plan implementation under discussion. Some parts of it, at least, specifically call out the need for advancing safe streets and mode shift in general. Relatively high level. But maybe something for the committee to weigh in on in the future. Any questions or comments on that right now? Hearing none. Our next and actually last item is upcoming outreach events. Any other upcoming outreach events that folks should be aware of? Gregory?
I am running the Illuminations ride on next Saturday, on the 16th. And I'm looking for marshals if anybody wants to help out. Shoot me an email. But it'll be from City Hall. I'm finalizing the route this weekend, depending on who signs up for the houses.
When's that map
Great,
coming
what
out?
are the times? Oh, sorry, Mark, what?
When's the map coming out?
Yeah.
Of the route or the
Somerville posts houses with lights stuff.
that is live updating, and I think then they
That's
stop
cool.
updating it at on December 9th. So I think there's 2 more days to post to it.
Cool. Thank you.
Clarification, is a marshal someone who just stands there or gets to ride?
Gets to ride and then just helps make sure everybody.
All right, I'm in.
Awesome.
I'll email you.
And I think the next question was about timing.
Oh, sorry. It's at 5:45 on December 16th, pending weather. If it's going to be super rainy or snowy. Brian has canceled it in the past, and he suggested I do the same if it's going to be bad weather, or possibly push it to Sunday.
Any other support you're looking for with that, Greg?
No, that's it. If you feel free to let people know what's happening. I'll post more stuff on Facebook. The invite over the weekend.
Cool. And can you send it to me and I can promote it in on Bike Committee's Twitter as well? Do you ever promote that in like the city's mobility letter or anything? I don't know if there's a conveniently timed one.
Actually, there may be a conveniently timed one next week, so we can at least ask Kate.
Another thing, is there like a link I could post about it? Like, is the Facebook link the way to go, or like, is there like, what's the best thing to write in the chat? Yeah.
Yeah, the Facebook link is the best thing.
Okay. Well, there's like, do you know Aaron Greiner of like Culture House in Somerville, like Union Square, like Spaces? They're having like a like queer anthem like event in Inman Square, and it's the same night as the 16th. So I wonder if they might shout it out if you want to go like see the lights and then head over, I feel like Aaron would do that. So I'm just gonna suggest it as like potential publicity.
Thank you.
Because the other event doesn't start till 10, so like you got to get out there on your bike, right? And like get the lights on. Exactly.
I mean, the routes have been pretty short in the past. I think they're a couple miles and at a family riding pace.
But it's still fun. It's like a parade.
Yeah.
I am interested in marshaling. I'm not sure if I'm free, so I'll let you know.
I'll bug you about it, Mark.
I will appreciate that.
Okay.
Awesome. Anything else on that or any other events? Gregory, thanks again for stepping up for leading that, and please don't hesitate to email the committee with anything that folks can support you with. Awesome. That is it on the agenda. Anything else before we adjourn? Hearing none, we will adjourn early tonight. That's all, folks. Have a good night.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
See you in the new year.